I still remember the first time I saw Olivia. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, the kind where the leaves painted the sidewalks in shades of orange and gold. I was at a small cafe, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee and lost in thought about my future when she walked in. Her laughter echoed in the cozy space, a sound so warm and inviting that it drew everyone's attention, including mine. She had this effortless grace about her, a sparkle in her green eyes that felt like a secret just waiting to be shared. As fate would have it, our eyes met, and she smiled, just a simple, genuine smile that lit up her face and somehow made me feel seen. I couldn't help but smile back, feeling a rush of warmth flood over me. That moment felt monumental, as if the universe had conspired to bring us together. Little did I know, that was the beginning of a beautiful chapter in my life. We struck up a conversation, and before I knew it, hours had passed. We shared stories about our lives, our dreams, and our aspirations over steaming cups of coffee. I was captivated by her passion for art and her dreams of traveling the world. Olivia had this incredible ability to make even the mundane seem extraordinary. Her laughter was infectious, and I felt more alive than I had in years. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue across the cafe, I realized I never wanted that day to end. Fast forward a few years, and there we were, celebrating our 10th anniversary. It was hard to believe how quickly time had passed, but every moment felt etched in my memory. We had grown together, weathering storms and basking in the sun. We chose a quaint little restaurant where we had shared our first date, hoping to rekindle the magic that had sparked between us. I remember the candlelight flickering softly, casting dancing shadows on our faces as we clinked our glasses, filled with sparkling wine, to toast a decade of love and partnership. 10 years, Olivia said, her eyes shimmering with nostalgia. Can you believe it? I chuckled, shaking my head in disbelief. It feels like just yesterday we were two kids talking about dreams over coffee. That night, we reminisced about all our shared memories, the laughter, the tears, the moments that shaped us into who we were. I recalled our first home together, a small apartment filled with mismatched furniture and a cacophony of plants that Olivia insisted on bringing home. We spent weekends painting walls and rearranging furniture, turning that tiny space into our sanctuary. I could still feel the joy radiating from her as she made every corner of our home feel alive. We talked about our son, Noah, and how he had become the center of our universe. I could see the pride in her eyes when she spoke of his milestones, his laughter, and the way he had inherited her creative spirit. We had spent countless hours playing in the park, building Lego castles, and reading bedtime stories, and every moment felt precious. I had always tried to be the perfect husband and father, pouring my love into every interaction, hoping to create a loving environment for our family. We've built something beautiful together, haven't we? Olivia said, reaching for my hand. Absolutely, I replied, squeezing her hand gently. I wouldn't trade this for anything. As we shared dessert, a decadent chocolate cake that melted in our mouths, I couldn't help but envision our future. We spoke of travel plans, dreaming of exploring distant lands together, visiting art galleries and sipping wine in little cafes. I could almost see it, Olivia and I wandering through the narrow streets of Paris. Hand in hand, her laughter echoing as we soaked in the beauty around us. In those moments, I felt like the luckiest man alive. Our love story was a tapestry woven with laughter, love, and shared dreams. I wanted nothing more than to continue building our life together, cherishing every single day we had. But as I sat there, lost in our memories, I had no idea that the foundation of our beautiful life was beginning to crumble. I was blissfully unaware that the shadows of betrayal were lurking just out of sight, ready to shatter the illusion of perfection we had created together. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly, like the faintest whisper of a storm brewing on the horizon. I remember the day it began, a typical Saturday morning in our household, filled with the usual cacophony of laughter and the smell of pancakes wafting from the kitchen. Noah was playing with his toys, and I was flipping pancakes while Olivia prepared our favorite fruit salad. Everything felt normal, yet there was something in the air that seemed slightly off. As I placed the last pancake on the stack, I turned to find Olivia sitting at the kitchen table, her attention glued to her phone. She had been scrolling through her messages for what felt like an eternity, her brow furrowed in concentration. I brushed it off at first, thinking she was simply catching up on social media or messaging a friend. After all, life had become hectic, and we were all busy in our worlds. But the longer I watched her, the more a knot formed in my stomach. In the days that followed, I began to notice a change in her demeanor. Olivia, who once shared every little detail about her day, had become more closed off. She would come home from work, and instead of regaling me with stories about her coworkers or the latest projects, she would retreat to our bedroom, often taking her phone with her. I found myself feeling like an outsider in our own home. The warmth and openness that had characterized our relationship felt like a distant memory. One evening, after Noah had gone to bed, I decided to bring up my concerns. We settled onto the couch, the soft glow of the lamp casting a cozy light around us. I took a deep breath, preparing to voice what had been nagging at me. Olivia, I began tentatively, I've noticed you've been a bit distant lately. Is everything okay? She looked up, momentarily surprised, then quickly masked her expression with a smile. Of course, everything's fine. Just busy with work, you know? I nodded, but her response felt rehearsed, like a line delivered by an actress in a play. I wanted to press further, to dig deeper, but the way she looked at me, a mixture of annoyance and a hint of something else, made me hesitate. Instead, I tried to shake off the feeling and focus on the moment, but the unease lingered in the back of my mind. As the weeks went by, the signs grew more pronounced. Olivia began leaving her phone in another room more often, and when I asked to borrow it to check something, she would give me an excuse, claiming it was out of battery or that she had just put it down somewhere. It seemed trivial, but it was in these little things that I began to sense a shift. The phone, once a shared device filled with our family photos and memories, now felt like a secret she guarded fiercely. There were also late nights at work. Olivia had always been dedicated to her job, but this was different. It was as if she was deliberately staying late, claiming that there were important projects to finish. I found myself picking up the slack at home, tucking Noah into bed alone, wishing she were there to share those precious moments. Every time I would call her, she would assure me she was just wrapping things up, but I could hear the faint sounds of laughter in the background, voices that weren't ours. I tried to reason with myself, thinking maybe I was overreacting. After all, life was busy, and we all had our stressors. But that instinctual feeling of unease refused to leave me. I started to scrutinize every interaction, replaying conversations in my mind, and searching for clues that would explain this sudden shift. Was I imagining things? Was I being paranoid, or was there something deeper lurking beneath the surface? One evening, I found myself waiting for her to return from work. The clock ticked away, the silence of our home amplifying my anxiety. When she finally walked through the door, her face lit up with a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. I could tell she was distracted, her mind somewhere else, and in that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of loss for the connection we once shared. "Hey, how was your day?" I asked, attempting to bridge the widening gap between us. "Busy," she replied, shrugging off the question, her phone buzzing in her pocket as she glanced at it before looking back at me. "Just a lot of things to juggle at the moment. Want to talk about it?" I offered, hoping to open the door to the intimacy we had always shared. "No, it's nothing. Just work stuff," she said quickly, almost too quickly. It was as if she was deliberately shutting me out, and my heart sank further into despair. That night, as I lay in bed beside her, sleep eluded me. I stared at the ceiling, replaying everything in my mind. My heart was heavy with the burden of doubt. What was happening to us? Why had we drifted so far apart? I realized that I was standing on the precipice of a storm, and though I tried to convince myself that it was just a passing cloud, deep down, I knew it was something much more ominous. The first signs of trouble were upon us, and with them came the shadow of betrayal. A shadow I could not yet see but could certainly feel creeping into our lives. It was a feeling I wished I could shake off, but as the days passed, that feeling only grew stronger, feeding on my insecurities and fears. The vibrant love we had shared felt increasingly distant, like a fading photograph, and I was left grappling with the reality that the storm was not just coming, it was already here. I had always been the type of person who internalized my worries, choosing to shoulder the burden alone rather than voice my concerns. But as the shadows in my home grew darker, the weight of uncertainty became too heavy to carry. I needed someone to confide in, someone who could provide clarity or at the very least, a listening ear. That's when I decided to reach out to Mike, my closest friend since college. Mike had been my confidant through thick and thin. We had shared countless late-night conversations over beers, dissecting everything from our aspirations to our relationships. He had a knack for providing perspective, and I hoped he could help me make sense of the turmoil brewing inside me. We agreed to meet at our usual spot, a cozy bar tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. The atmosphere was warm and inviting, filled with the gentle hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses. As I walked in, the familiar scent of hops and aged wood enveloped me, and I felt a sense of comfort wash over me. Mike was already seated at our favorite table, nursing a pint of beer. He looked up and waved, a broad smile lighting up his face. "Hey, man, long time no see," he called out, gesturing for me to join him. "Yeah, too long," I replied, sinking into the chair across from him. I needed a break from reality. He raised an eyebrow, sensing something was off. "What's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." I let out a heavy sigh, trying to find the right words to articulate the storm brewing in my mind. "It's about Olivia," I finally admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Mike's expression shifted to one of concern. "What's wrong? Is everything okay between you two?" I took a moment to collect my thoughts, feeling the weight of my emotions pressing down on me. "I don't know, man. Lately, she's been acting different. More distant, you know? She's been spending a lot of time at work and leaving her phone around like it's some kind of secret." As I spoke, I watched Mike's reaction closely. He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms across his chest. "Okay, but have you talked to her about it?" I nodded. "I tried. I asked her if everything was all right. But she brushed me off, saying it was just work stress. But I can't shake this feeling that something's off. It's like she's hiding something from me." Mike took a sip of his beer, contemplating my words. "Look, man, relationships can go through rough patches. Sometimes people get caught up in their heads. It doesn't necessarily mean she's cheating or anything." I appreciated his attempt to reassure me, but it only fueled my frustration. "I know, but it's more than that. It feels like there's a wall between us. I want to believe it's just a phase, but I can't help feeling that something isn't right." He nodded slowly, his expression serious. "You've been married for 10 years. It's normal to have ups and downs. Just give it some time, and try to communicate better. Maybe you're overthinking it?" I felt a surge of anger rise within me. "I wish it were that simple, Mike. I've seen the way she's been acting. It's not just a passing phase. It feels like I'm losing her, and I don't know why." His eyes softened as he leaned forward, his voice low and sincere. "Okay, I get it. But jumping to conclusions might just push her further away. Why don't you try to have an open and honest conversation with her again? Ask her directly how she feels about your relationship." "Believe me, I've tried," I replied, exasperation creeping into my voice. "But every time I bring it up, she shuts me down. It's like she's built this fortress around herself." Mike considered this for a moment. "Then maybe it's not about you or what you're doing wrong. Sometimes people just need space. Give her some time, but keep an eye out. If things don't change, then you can reassess." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "I just wish I had some clarity. I want to trust her, but every day feels like I'm walking on eggshells." "Trust your instincts," he said firmly. "But don't let paranoia cloud your judgment. You've been through too much together to let your fears drive a wedge between you." I took a deep breath, trying to digest his advice. "You're right. I just need to find a way to talk to her without making it feel like an interrogation." "Exactly," Mike replied, his smile returning. "Just keep it casual. Focus on the good moments. Remind her why you fell in love in the first place." As the conversation shifted to lighter topics, our favorite sports teams, the latest movies, we both enjoyed the easy banter that had always characterized our friendship. But deep down, I couldn't shake off the feeling of dread that had taken residence in my gut. Mike's words echoed in my mind, a mix of comfort and frustration. When it was time to leave, I felt a bittersweet sense of relief. I knew I had to confront my fears, but I also understood that I couldn't let my insecurities dictate my actions. I needed to gather my strength and face the truth head-on, no matter how painful it might be. As I walked home, I reflected on our conversation, the shadows of doubt swirling around me. I felt like I was standing at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take. All I knew was that I had to find a way to reach Olivia and bring back the connection we had lost. I wanted to believe that the love we had built over the years could withstand this storm, but with every passing day, that belief was being put to the test. As the days passed, the uneasy feeling in my stomach morphed into a consuming obsession. I had tried to convince myself that everything was fine, that my fears were unfounded, but deep down, I knew something was amiss. Every time Olivia left for work or was absorbed in her phone, I felt a gnawing urge to uncover the truth lurking beneath the surface of her seemingly normal behavior. One fateful evening, after another frustrating day of half-hearted conversations and fleeting glances, I made a decision that would forever alter the course of my life. I would investigate. It was a choice that both excited and terrified me. I couldn't just sit back and wait for answers to fall into my lap. I needed to know what was going on, even if it meant crossing boundaries I had never imagined I would breach. That night, after Olivia had gone to bed, I found myself staring at her phone, the device that held secrets I was desperate to uncover. The house was eerily quiet, and the ticking of the clock in the background felt like a countdown to an inevitable confrontation. With a deep breath, I picked up her phone, the weight of it heavy in my hands, and reluctantly entered her passcode. It felt wrong, yet I was compelled by a mixture of fear and a desperate need for answers. As I scrolled through her messages, my heart raced with each new revelation. I was unprepared for what I found. Texts flowed before my eyes, casual exchanges that had once seemed harmless now appeared sinister in retrospect. Olivia's flirty remarks and inside jokes made my stomach churn as I realized that these messages were not meant for me. They painted a picture of a side of her life that I had been blissfully unaware of. Then I found it, the message that shattered my world. A string of texts from an unknown number. One that I recognized as belonging to my boss, Daniel. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Just you and me, like old times." I felt the floor drop out from beneath me. It was a gut-wrenching revelation that felt surreal, like a scene from a movie. How could this be happening? The woman I had trusted, and shared my life with, was having an affair with the very person I reported to. The realization hit me like a freight train, each word echoing in my mind, intensifying the pain that threatened to engulf me. I had hoped for some misunderstanding, some innocent explanation, but the evidence was damning. I felt a mix of emotions swirling within me: shock, disbelief, and an overwhelming wave of anger. The love I thought we had felt like a lie, shattered by this stark reality. I leaned against the counter, the cold surface grounding me as I fought against the tidal wave of emotions. It felt surreal, as if I were a spectator in my own life, watching the horror unfold. How long had this been going on? Did she truly care about our family? Each question pierced me like a dagger, leaving me breathless. I felt betrayed, not just by her, but by the life we had built together. As the night wore on, I paced the room, wrestling with my emotions. My thoughts spiraled out of control, flinging me between anger and heartbreak. The love I had cherished now felt tainted, like a beautiful painting splattered with dark paint. I mourned the life we had, the future I thought we would share, and the innocence that had been so easily stripped away. Finally, in the early hours of the morning, I fell into bed, utterly spent. I stared at the ceiling, the darkness enveloping me, but sleep refused to come. I kept replaying the images of our life together, the laughter, the love, the promises we had made. It felt like a cruel joke, a facade that had crumbled in an instant. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I believed in was a lie. As dawn broke, casting a pale light into the room, I realized I was teetering on the edge of an abyss, filled with questions that had no easy answers. I had trusted her with my heart, and now that trust lay shattered at my feet. The road ahead was unclear, but one thing was certain: I could no longer ignore the truth, nor could I pretend that everything was fine. I had to confront her. I had to demand answers. The thought sent shivers down my spine, but I knew it was inevitable. I was standing at the crossroads of betrayal and revelation, and I had no choice but to step forward into the unknown. The days following my discovery felt like I was trapped in a surreal nightmare from which I couldn't awaken. Each morning, I would wake up hoping it had all been a bad dream, only to be hit with the crushing reality of Olivia's betrayal. I had spent years building a life with her, filled with shared dreams, laughter, and an unbreakable bond, or so I thought. Now, that bond lay in tatters, and all I could feel was a profound sense of loss mixed with an overwhelming desire for revenge. As the fog of betrayal lifted, clarity replaced my anger. I realized that I couldn't simply forgive her. The thought of doing so made me feel sick. Forgiveness would mean accepting what she had done, and I wasn't ready for that. No, I needed to act. I needed her to feel the pain I felt, to understand the weight of her choices. But how? The idea began to take shape in my mind, a plan so devious and satisfying that it sent shivers down my spine. I thought about Daniel, my boss, the man who had not only stolen my wife but had also exploited the trust I had placed in him. He had been a mentor of sorts, a figure I admired professionally. But now I saw him for what he truly was, a snake lurking in the grass, waiting for the right moment to strike. My heart raced as I envisioned the chaos that would ensue if I brought the truth to light. I could imagine the shock on his face, the disbelief, the anger that would rip through him like wildfire. And Olivia? She would be caught in the crossfire, facing the consequences of her actions in the most public and painful way. With my resolve hardening, I began to gather evidence of her infidelity. I went back through her phone, meticulously documenting each message, every flirty exchange, and the incriminating text that had exposed her affair with Daniel. It felt wrong, invasive even, but it was a necessary step in my plan. I saved screenshots, creating a folder that held the raw details of her betrayal, a cold, hard testament to the love I had lost. Every moment I spent collecting these pieces of evidence only fueled the fire within me. I would not just expose her, I would ensure that she faced the consequences of her actions. I envisioned the scene, Daniel's office, the shock on his face as I laid out the truth. I imagined Olivia's reaction as she realized that her world was collapsing around her, her secret laid bare for everyone to see. But it wasn't just about revenge against Olivia and Daniel, it was about reclaiming my sense of power. In my mind, I had been reduced to a victim of their deceit, but this plan would allow me to take control back. I wouldn't be the one left broken and betrayed. No, I would be the one who revealed the truth. The one who pulled the strings in this dark game. Each night, I would lay awake, rehearsing my speech in front of the mirror, imagining the moment I would confront them both. I could picture the disbelief in Olivia's eyes, the realization that I had known all along. The thought of her surprise filled me with a twisted sense of satisfaction. I would bring Daniel down, ruining his perfect facade, and exposing him for the man he truly was. In the days that followed, I began to compile my evidence into a comprehensive file. I meticulously organized every text, every photo, and every detail that illustrated their affair. I even included timestamps and context, ensuring that there would be no way for them to deny the truth. As I worked, I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in weeks. It was as if I was piecing together a puzzle that would lead to the ultimate revelation, one that would shatter their lives and bring them both to their knees. I also thought about the implications of my actions. Would it hurt Olivia to see her life unravel? Yes, but it was the only way for me to find closure. The weight of her betrayal hung heavily on my heart, and the only remedy I could find was to watch her face the fallout of her choices. I had been faithful, devoted, and loyal, and yet she had thrown it all away for a moment of pleasure. In my mind, her punishment was justifiable. I meticulously planned my approach, strategizing how to deliver the evidence to Daniel's wife, Sarah. It needed to be done subtly, carefully, so as not to raise any suspicions before the big reveal. I could see myself casually approaching her at work or perhaps at a social event, armed with my carefully crafted evidence, ready to unveil the sordid truth. As the days wore on, I became consumed by the anticipation of that moment, feeling a dark thrill coursing through my veins. The idea of watching everything unravel brought me a twisted sense of joy, an escape from the pain that had threatened to drown me. I was no longer the passive victim in this narrative. I was the architect of my revenge. And it felt exhilarating, but amidst the thrill of plotting revenge, a part of me wondered if I was losing myself in this darkness. Would I be able to walk away from this unscathed? Would I regret my actions once the dust settled? Deep down, I knew I was playing a dangerous game, one that could have unforeseen consequences. But in that moment, with my heart still raw from betrayal, I pushed those thoughts aside. I was determined to see this plan through, no matter the cost. I would gather my evidence, execute my plan, and finally reclaim my dignity. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready to step into the fray. Olivia had chosen her path, and now, it was my turn to choose mine, one that would bring the truth to light and ensure that she felt the full weight of her betrayal. The day I had been building up to arrived with a heavy weight in my chest. I had spent countless hours meticulously crafting the evidence of Olivia's betrayal, gathering texts, photos, and every little detail that painted a damning picture of her affair with Daniel. The folder on my computer was filled with every piece of information that would rip apart the life I once knew, and now it was time to take the final step. Sitting at my desk, I felt a mix of anticipation and dread swirl inside me. The sun streamed through the window, casting a warm glow on the room, but it felt cold to me. I stared at the screen, my heart racing as I prepared to hit send. The weight of my actions loomed over me like a storm cloud, casting shadows over what should have been a moment of triumph. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my shaking hands. I had decided to send the evidence anonymously, a method that felt both cowardly and necessary. Cowardly because I was hiding behind the anonymity of a screen, but necessary because I didn't want Olivia or Daniel to know I had been the one to expose their betrayal until it was too late. I didn't want to face them just yet. I wanted to see their reactions from a distance, to savor the moment when the truth unfolded. As I opened my email client, the familiar screen seemed foreign, the cursor blinking mockingly at me. I typed in Sarah's email address, Daniel's wife. The thought of her receiving this information sent a jolt of fear through me. Would she be angry? Sad? Would she even believe it? My mind raced with the possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. I had crafted a brief message to accompany the evidence. Dear Sarah, I believe you deserve to know the truth about your husband and my wife. Please see the attached documents for more information. It felt cold and clinical, exactly what I wanted it to be. There was no room for sentimentality in a message like this. It had to be stark and straightforward. With trembling fingers, I attached the folder of evidence. Each document felt like a weight added to the already heavy burden I carried. This wasn't just about Olivia and Daniel, it was about our lives, our families, and the future that was now irrevocably altered. I took another deep breath, the air thick with tension, and hovered my cursor over the send button. In that moment, time seemed to slow. I felt the enormity of my decision crashing down on me like a wave, each thought colliding violently in my mind. What if this was the wrong move? What if I was destroying not only their lives but my own as well? My heart raced as I imagined the fallout, the chaos, the heartache, the potential consequences of exposing this dark secret. I had envisioned this moment for so long, but now that it was here, I felt uncertain. What if Daniel retaliated? What if Olivia came after me with a fury I could not anticipate? The thoughts raced through my mind like a runaway train. And for a brief moment, I hesitated. The weight of my anger was being replaced by a heavy blanket of fear. I had always considered myself a reasonable man, someone who sought justice rather than revenge. Yet here I was, poised to enact a plan that could spiral out of control in ways I could not foresee. But then I thought about Olivia. The betrayal, the lies, the pain she had caused, it all came rushing back. I thought about the countless nights I had spent wondering if I was enough for her. Questioning my worth. This wasn't just about her infidelity, it was about reclaiming my dignity and seeking justice for the years I had devoted to our family. I couldn't allow fear to dictate my actions any longer. I steeled myself, channeling the pain and anger into determination. I clicked the send button, and in that instant, I felt a rush of relief wash over me. It was as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders, the burden of secrecy finally released. I had done it, I had taken a stand. But the relief was quickly replaced by a haunting sense of dread. I leaned back in my chair, my heart pounding as the reality of what I had done began to sink in. There was no turning back now. I had set off a chain reaction that could irrevocably change our lives. I could only imagine the look on Olivia's face when she discovered what had happened. Would she come to me, angry and hurt? Or would she try to deny everything, playing the victim? I felt a mix of emotions swirling within me, relief, fear, doubt, and even a tinge of exhilaration. I was the one in control now, I had made my choice. But with that control came a weighty responsibility. I had no idea how Olivia or Daniel would react, and that uncertainty gnawed at me. In the days that followed, I felt like I was walking a tightrope, balanced precariously between relief and anxiety. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart raced. I half expected a message from Olivia, confronting me about what I had done. I found myself on edge, anticipating the inevitable fallout from my actions. I also began to wonder if I had truly done the right thing. Would exposing Olivia's betrayal lead to any kind of resolution for me, or would it only open the floodgates to more pain? Each scenario played out in my mind, and the questions plagued me as I went about my daily routine. Yet, deep down, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this was the catalyst I needed to start anew. Perhaps, in bringing the truth to light, I could find my way back to the man I used to be, The man who believed in love and trust. The man who had fought for his family. But for now, I was left in the dark, waiting for the storm I had unleashed to unfold. The anticipation was suffocating, and I could only brace myself for whatever would come next. The days following my decision to expose Olivia and Daniel felt like a slow-motion disaster unfolding before my eyes. I had watched countless films where the protagonist executed a perfect plan of revenge, and I had naively imagined my scenario playing out with a sense of justice and closure. But reality had other plans, plans that were messy, chaotic, and utterly devastating. Within 24 hours of sending that fateful email, the storm I had unleashed began to brew. Whispers started circulating the office, like an insidious virus infecting everyone in its path. My colleagues, unaware of my involvement, speculated wildly about the rumors surrounding Daniel and Olivia. It felt surreal to hear snippets of conversation about them as I sat at my desk, a spectator to the chaos that was consuming our lives. Then came the phone call from Sarah, Daniel's wife. Her voice was a mixture of shock and heartbreak, and every word pierced through me like a dagger. "Is this true?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Did you think this would help anything?" I had to remind myself that this was the very moment I had envisioned, yet it felt far from the satisfaction I had hoped for. As she pressed for answers, I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. I had set this in motion, and now I was standing on the sidelines, watching it spiral out of control. That evening, the scandal erupted publicly. A local newspaper caught wind of the story, and within hours, the headlines blared with shocking details of an affair between a prominent executive and a married woman. Suddenly, it wasn't just a private matter between us, it was the talk of the town. I could hardly bear the thought of my name being associated with the turmoil. I felt a mix of anxiety and dread creeping into my bones, realizing that my actions had thrown both families into the public eye, exposing our lives to scrutiny and judgment. As the days turned into weeks, both families crumbled under the weight of the scandal. Daniel, once a respected figure in the community, became a pariah. His colleagues distanced themselves, friends turned their backs, and the shame of the affair hung over him like a heavy shroud. The fallout was swift and ruthless. I could almost hear the echoes of laughter and whispers mocking him in the halls of the office. I didn't take pleasure in his downfall. Yet I couldn't help but feel a pang of satisfaction knowing he was now experiencing the fallout of the betrayal he had orchestrated. Olivia, too, found herself caught in a whirlwind of shame and regret. Her initial bravado crumbled, and I watched as the woman I once loved transformed into a ghost of her former self. The vibrant, spirited person I had known seemed to fade away, replaced by a hollow shell, lost in a haze of sorrow and confusion. She had lost not just her marriage but her sense of self. The final straw came when Olivia moved out of our home, leaving behind the remnants of our life together, family photos, our child's toys, the love letters we had exchanged. Watching her pack her belongings was like watching a tragic play unfold in slow motion. Each item she placed into a box felt like another piece of our life together slipping through my fingers. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to ask her why she had chosen this path, but the anger that had fueled my actions began to dissolve into sorrow. I was left to face our child alone, trying to piece together a semblance of normalcy amidst the chaos. It broke my heart to see them confused, trying to understand why their mother had suddenly disappeared from their life. I held them close, attempting to shield them from the reality of our situation, but deep down, I knew the truth would eventually surface. They were too young to comprehend the complexities of adult relationships, yet they bore the brunt of our choices. Meanwhile, Sarah sought comfort in her way, reaching out to friends and family. The community rallied around her, offering support as she tried to rebuild her life in the aftermath of her husband's betrayal. I had never spoken to her again after that phone call, yet I felt a strange kinship with her. We were both victims in this scenario, caught in the crossfire of a love that had been tarnished by deception. As the weeks dragged on, I began to witness the ripple effects of my actions. Friends who once filled our home with laughter now hesitated to reach out, unsure of how to navigate the tension surrounding the scandal. Invitations to social gatherings ceased, and the silence in our home grew heavier with each passing day. I had not only destroyed Olivia's life, I had dismantled our entire social circle. Through it all, I grappled with the consequences of my revenge. The initial satisfaction I had felt when I sent that email had dissipated, replaced by a profound sense of loss. I had wanted Olivia to feel the weight of her betrayal, to face the consequences of her choices. Yet I hadn't considered the collateral damage. Families were shattered, friendships destroyed, and our child was left in the wake of a storm that I had initiated. At night, I would lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the events in my mind like a broken record. I had taken control, but at what cost? I found myself questioning the very foundations of my morality. Had I done the right thing? Was my thirst for revenge worth the lives that had been turned upside down? In my darkest moments, I realized that I was not only mourning the loss of my marriage but also the loss of the person I once was. I had become consumed by bitterness, driven by anger, and in my quest for justice, I had lost sight of the values I had once held dear. My actions had unleashed chaos I couldn't contain, and now I was left to face the repercussions alone. The destruction of both families lay heavy on my heart, a burden that would haunt me for years to come. The desire for revenge had led me down a path I had never intended to walk, leaving me to grapple with the fragments of a shattered existence. As I looked at my child, I felt a deep longing for healing, for a way to rebuild the love that had been lost, the innocence that had been stolen, and the hope that now felt so far out of reach. In the end, I came to understand that revenge had not brought me the closure I so desperately sought. Instead, it had opened a Pandora's box of despair, one that would take time, patience, and forgiveness to close. The realization hit me hard. In seeking to punish those who had wronged me, I had only succeeded in deepening my wounds. As I stood amidst the wreckage of our lives, I knew that the healing journey had only just begun. As I sat in the dimly lit living room, cradling my child in my arms, a heavy silence enveloped us. The toys lay scattered on the floor, remnants of a once vibrant life that had now turned chaotic and uncertain. I stared out the window, watching the leaves flutter in the autumn breeze, their colors vibrant yet fleeting, much like the life I had envisioned just months ago. The reality of my actions began to settle in, like a storm cloud hanging over me, dark and unrelenting. In the quiet moments of reflection, I grappled with the emptiness that had taken root in my heart. I had sought revenge, hoping it would fill the void left by Olivia's betrayal, but instead, I found myself even more isolated. The satisfaction I had anticipated never materialized. All I was left with was regret and a sense of profound loss. I looked down at my child, their innocent eyes gazing up at me. And I realized the true price of my decisions. My revenge had not only cost me my marriage but also shattered the fragile fabric of our family. The pain I had inflicted upon Olivia and Daniel had come back to haunt me, leaving scars that would take years to heal. I could see it now. The cycle of betrayal and vengeance had created a ripple effect, touching everyone around us and forever altering the course of our lives. As I rocked my child gently, I thought about the lessons I had learned through this heart-wrenching experience. Lives can unravel in an instant, and the consequences of our choices can be devastating. What had once been a life filled with love and dreams had disintegrated into fragments of sorrow and despair. The quest for vengeance had not restored my dignity, it had only deepened the wounds. In that moment of clarity, I understood that moving forward meant embracing forgiveness, first for Olivia, for Daniel, and ultimately, for myself. I had let anger guide my actions, but now I needed to find a way to break free from its grip. I wanted to build a future for my child, one filled with love and understanding rather than resentment. As I looked at my child, I felt a flicker of hope. They deserved a life free from the shadows of my past mistakes. The journey ahead would not be easy, but it was one I was willing to embark on. The road to healing would require patience and strength, but I was determined to forge a new path, one that prioritized love over revenge.